Well, welcome. It's my great honour and privilege to have as my guest here Errol Musk. He is, of course, he must get so sick of this, always being introduced as the father of Elon Musk, but such is your lot in life. Errol, do you mind that? Do you mind everyone always saying you're Elon's dad?
No, not at all. I've been on television myself for 50 years, off and on.
Yeah.
You know, I used to be early on, I was first English-speaking city council in Pretoria for 30 years at the age of about 24. So I was the source of all newspaper reports because no one else would give the newspapers anything, you know. But so off and on I've been on television and.
So you've been in the limelight in your own right, obviously. Yes. Your son, right? Obviously, I want to make this interview about you and obviously about Elon as well. Now, it strikes me he's a pretty good businessman. He's done rather well in life. I read the other day, you know, here's a guy, he runs 3 massive companies while playing video games and, by the way, is sorting out the American government as well in terms of efficiency. So he does seem to have this super brain, but he's got a serious business acumen. Now, you were no slouch yourself in the area of business, were you?
No.
Do you think that's where he got it from you?
Well, yes, you know, I think the values that he has, I sort of put into him. I mean, until a few years ago, he was, you know, sort of being from South Africa and everything, he was a, you know, sort of flaming Democrat, you know, because the idea was that you needed to be if you came from South Africa, sort of thing, and for all my children. And you know, they also believed that the Democrats were for the underdog. And they've since actually seen something different, and so they've returned more or less, you might say, to the values I taught them, which is good.
And Elon, when he was at school, I think he was a decent pupil, but he wasn't the shining star that you might have expected. You know, his grades were average, but he must have been some kind of an unusual kid. Did you recognise that you had someone special on your hands here? Or
well, his grades were not average. no, but both my sons, you know, their grades, they grew up with me. They, you know, stayed with me after their mother and I divorced. No, I took them to school and back every day until they finished school. And so I was pretty, you know, up on what they were doing. And they were, you know, kids I didn't have to worry about. I didn't have to check on them or see if they're doing their work or anything like that. No, they were very bright. I must say, though, you know, to be quite frank, I never really, I always thought I'd be looking after them forever, you know. And sort of, you know. And I never really thought they would, you know, I never gave it any thought, really. I just presumed I would always be there, you know. And then when they started, they just went up, you know, just like rockets.
This is Errol and Kimball, right? So
Elon and Kimball, yeah.
Yes. Are you saying that when he was a kid, I mean, he was, you know, a bright kid, but you didn't see anything in him that may have turned him into
yes, of course I did. I mean, you know, they were very bright. I mean, he was reading, you know, Elon was reading, you know, very hefty novels at a very young age, maybe 9. And, you know, he would cause me trouble sometimes. You would, you know, get some adult would say to him, "Hey, little boy, you're reading that book. Oh, you're looking at the pictures." And then Elon would say, you know, to the adult, "What, are you stupid or something? Of course I'm reading this book," you know. No, at the age of 11, he came to me with a request to buy a PC for himself, the new, which came out in '82. The IBM XDA, which was the first PC that was ever made. Yeah. And with a mouse and a screen and a printer and so forth. Yeah. And he came to me with that. He wanted to get that. And so that, and of course, when I introduced him, or when we finally got him to meet the people who brought out the XDA, they were quite adamant that he must get one of these computers. That was the big shots that came from America and Britain to introduce it in South Africa. So, you know, he was very up on that. And then, you know, in a couple of years, he was showing me things. You see this? He said, "It's a modem." I said, "What's that?" He says, "Well, this I can communicate with Oxford University." You know, and he's like 12 years old. Yeah. So obviously he wasn't your average kid.
So at that point, even at 12 years old, right at the advent of the laptop era, if you like, the computer era, you had a kid who clearly spotted the potential.
Oh, yes. So, I mean, but I never, at the same time, you know, they were very, I was, you know, I suppose you could say, I made things work. I got everything successful, I suppose you could say. And I always thought I would be, I never gave it much thought. I just presumed I would be looking after them, you know, and never thought about them going out and actually, you know, I suppose when they finally started finishing their studies, I started thinking about whether they would get a job somewhere. And I remember my son Kimball saying to me he's going to work for some other company, insurance or something. Yeah. And I thought, well, that's not a bad idea, you know.
Right.
But it never happened. I mean, they went straight into .com business.
Yeah. Now, Elon, was it? I think it was like about '89. He came over to Canada, didn't he?
He actually in '89 he completed 6 months at the University of Pretoria.
Pretoria, which is where you're from.
Very, very unhappy. I could see he was very unhappy. We were due to go out one day. It was actually Republic Day, and he didn't want to get out of bed. So I went up, pulled him out of bed, and he was very unhappy. And
why was he unhappy there?
Well, he was very depressed, and I could see he's very depressed. And then I said to him,
"But why?"
As I'm talking to you,
why was he depressed?
Well, I don't know. I didn't ask him. I saw him, and I saw he was very depressed. And I said to him, my actual words, as I'm sitting here now, I said to him, "It's not working for you, is it?" And he said, "No, it's not working for me." So then a sort of thing came into my head, and I said to him, as I was leaning back against his desk and he was sitting on the edge of the bed, I said to him, "Would you like to study in America?" And he said, "Yes." He didn't hesitate. "Yes," he said. I said, "Right, let's do that." And he was up and we were out for lunch, and 10 days later he left the country.
And he went to Canada first, that's where his mother was.
We arranged a 5-stop ticket for him that you could get in those days,
right.
You know.
Yeah.
You got a 5-stop ticket, and we had relatives in Montreal, so that seemed a good place to start. Mm-hmm. And, you know, so it was across the United States and Canada that we had relatives. His mother was from Canada originally. And so we had relatives and friends across Canada and, of course, also in the United States.
Let's get back to his new life on the other side of the Atlantic in just a second. Obviously, lots to talk about there. But before he headed off for Canada, you were telling me the other night when you came onto my show on Talk, The Political Asylum, that at one point, big story at the moment, that more and more farms owned by white farmers are being procured, if you like, by black activists, and some of them are being killed. Now, you were running a farm at one point, and didn't they try to invade your farm, and you ended up having to have a running battle with them? And you had a little girl there. Tell us what happened.
Well, you know, I had a horse stud in north of Johannesburg, and I kept it all the years. Even after we left it, I kept it. I didn't sell it. I kept the land with the idea that one day it might, you know, be able to be developed. And so I had 2 houses on it, and I rented them out. And on that particular time, I was painting out the one house, and so I went over to see the painters with my 6-year-old daughter, and I went there at 5 in the evening. And saw the painters off and put the lights on to have a look. And my daughter, you know, started running about the house. And
how old was she then?
She was 6 years old.
Just a little girl, yeah, okay.
She's now 32 or 30-ish, 32 years. Yeah. Anyway, the thing is she wanted to run a bath for herself, as we used to live there. And then, so I set that up. You always went about armed in those days. And so I put my weapon on the shelf in the bathroom out of sight from her. And then I heard some noise in the lounge. I went up to the lounge, and without any weapon or anything, and there were 7 or 8 men in the lounge, and they just opened fire on me straight away.
Oh, God.
And then I ran, luckily they missed, and I ran back down the passage, got my weapon, and then as they came down the passage, I took them out, 3 of them.
Took 3 of them out, and you were tried for that?
Yes, I was charged with murder. It was a sort of pre-trial or something like that with a magistrate. And the police helped me, the police woman and everything. They told me not to lose my temper and not to, say anything like clever or anything like that. And, at one point, the magistrate, who was a white man, he said to me, couldn't I have used less violence? And I said, well, they fired 52 shots at me, and I fired 2 shots. I don't think that's violence on my part. you know.
How did you manage to kill 3 of them?
It's smart.
How did you kill 3 of them with 2 shots?
Well, it's a Magnum, so when you...
A Magnum? What, like in the Clint Eastwood films?
Yes.
The most powerful handgun in the...
Well, it's not the 45, it's a 375.
That's a pretty powerful gun, though.
357,
right?
I mean.
Yeah.
It's the 357. It's very powerful, yes, extremely powerful. And the noise from it is gross. And after the event, with their shooting and my shooting in a closed space, the police said to me, "You're going to have hearing loss." And I said, "Oh, really?" And as it happened, I lost hearing in my right ear.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Because of that incident?
Yes. Because
so when you said about having a powerful gun and there were 3, so did one of the bullets go through one of them and into the other? Is that what happened? Good Lord. And you were tried and acquitted, presumably on the basis of self-defense.
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 Yes.
And you're protecting your 6-year-old daughter, so...
Yes, she was there. She saw the whole thing. I was just talking to her about it. She lives in Texas now. And she was saying to me, she remembers how we managed to escape. They shot the windows out, so we were able to climb out through shot windows, and we were able to hide in the grass outside, some shrubs and grass.
Yeah.
And she was telling me how she remembers how we lay in the grass and how they were searching for us while we were laying in the grass, you know.
Oh my God. And how were you feeling then? I mean, you're a sort of talented middle-class guy, studied at university, you were running successful businesses. You know, the arena of having a gunfight at the OK Corral, not really something you would expect to experience. How did that feel when that was happening?
Well, yeah, you know, it's not something I would want to happen again, and it's not something I would have sought.
I can imagine.
I wouldn't want that. You know, I've had... you know, my brother is a medical specialist in Joburg. He's had the situation. He's went to a golf driving range. There's a lot of this in South Africa. And they just broke in and put their boots on the women's heads and pulled their rings off and threatened to shoot everybody. And everybody luckily kept quiet, and they, you know, took everything and went off with the people's cars. So it's a sort of thing, you know. But I was 11 years in the South African military, and so I had a fair amount of experience, not to say in that kind of thing, you know, like a house shooting, but I mean, I had a fair amount of experience in dealing with situations. I was at the end the OC of the unit of 700 or so.
So had you been involved in any conflict before?
Yes.
Had you had to open your gun on people before?
No, we've actually just simply... you know, caught people who were trying to, you know, infiltrate, but without any, a little bit of rough stuff, but not terribly bad. You know.
So you've told Elon about this shocking incident, I assume. What's his attitude to that?
Oh no! I mean, you know, they know. You know, they're fully aware of the situation. I mean, they're fully aware of the situation. That's one of the reasons, you know. When Elon demanded rather that we come and live, my second wife and family come and live in the United States in early 2000s, and we didn't want to go, but we went, and we didn't like it. So after a couple of years,
Is it California? California.
Yes, California, yeah. Malibu. We actually lived in Beverly Hills and then Malibu.
I know it well.
And our neighbor was Barbara Streisand.
Oh, really? Really?
Yeah. But anyway, the thing is, we didn't like it, so we came back to South Africa, and you know, we sort of basically ran away, which is what led to everybody thinking I'm estranged from Elon, because Elon said he's never going to talk to me again after doing that. But wasn't long after we were back in South Africa with the 2 daughters I had with my second wife, that they said to me, "Can we please bring Rose and Alexandra back?" Right. They both live in Texas now.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Can we please bring them back to the US to stay with us, because we don't want them in a situation where they're living inside curled, you know, razor wire. They're living inside electric fences. They're living inside. They've got you have a machine gun on the front lawn. Of course, we didn't really have a machine gun, but that was their words. You've got a machine gun on the front lawn. We don't want Rose and Alexandra there. We want, that's, you know, it's our sisters. We would like them to come and stay with us. So I agreed. So
they've gone
Alexandra
back.
And Rose went to Rose is still at primary school. She went to go and stay with my sons and went to primary school. And then Ali was she's 6 years older. So she finished school there, then she went on to university there, and they've never come back.
Well, let's cut through, let's try and unpack your relationship with Elon now, because as you alluded to just now, you know, I can only relayed to you what I've read in the press, and there's talk of this sort of bitter estrangement, and that you don't talk. And he once said,
that's not true.
And I'm asking you this. He once said that you're like the worst person in the world. What was all that about? Why did those reports come about? And as I understand it, you're back on talking terms. You talk a lot now. So how did that all happen in the first place?
Well, it was because we didn't like living in the United States, and we decided we want to go back to South Africa. And we had everything bought for us. We had everything. And we took a vote. On the sort of unpleasant side, my South African Dutch Afrikaans wife, she said, if I don't go back, I'm going to kill myself. So she tried to kill herself. So we had $20,000 of treatment to get her back into health. And then we had a sort of vote, and we decided we're going to go. But the passports were kept by Elon's office, and so we went and got temporary passports at the consulate for South Africa. And we actually just beat them chasing us to prevent us from leaving.
Elon's people were chasing you to stop you leaving because he so didn't want you to go.
Yes, they didn't want us to go. And they told us we're mad to go back. But we wanted to go back, and so we just escaped. We left every single thing we had behind.
Really? And that was when?
That was 2004.
Okay. It's just,
And then Elon said he's never going to speak to us again. And I said to Kimball, and Kimball said, I'm not speaking to you ever again. I said, surely not. He said, all right, for 10 years, we're not going to speak to you.
But he put a time frame on it. And how long did they not speak to you for?
Well, because they asked for their sisters, Alexandra and Rose, to come back to America within a couple of years or so, because they were scared for them being in South Africa, we obviously soon got back on to sort of visiting terms, but we never spoke about anything. We were like, it was sort of grim lunches and meeting ups and things like that.
And do you speak regularly to Elon now?
Well, they're very, very busy. So I had lunch with Kimball about 3 months ago in Abu Dhabi. We met up. Elon and I had a weekend with about 12 months ago. But they're very, very busy, and there's no real point in me or them phoning me. We could exchange emails, and exchange birthday greetings, that sort of thing, nothing.
Now, let's get to the truth of their first, Kimball and Elon's first business. What was it called again?
Zip2.
Zip2. It's a sort of online business, I think, dealing in information about cities, that kind of stuff. It was obviously a very successful company. Elon and Kimball sold it remarkably well. The question mark is how it started. I keep reading that you gave them $28,000.
Well, actually, I sent them about $40,000. But I had to send it through Israel because you weren't allowed to send money out of the country.
Right.
So it was sent secretly.
Did they ask you for that money?
Yes, they asked.
Because Elon denies that you ever gave him.
Well, I don't know why. I can't imagine why he would do that. And Kimball actually said to me, without that money, they wouldn't have been able to succeed at all. It just got them through. And so I was able to sell what I had in South Africa after 1994. This was 1995.
Yeah.
You couldn't sell anything in South Africa in 1995. Everything, people were streaming out of the country as fast as they could. There was nothing, there was no development. I sold a yacht that I paid $400,000 for. Sold it for $100,000. And finally, an extra $5,000 for the rubber duck. But all that money I sent to them and whatever else I could, and eventually it was about $40,000. But then to get it to them, I had to go to a sort of organization that was sending money out of the country through Israel illegally. So I had to give them the money, and then I would not even know whether they got it. So 3 weeks later, I finally heard, yes, they got the money, and about $30,000.
And is it true that they did pay you $200,000 back?
Oh, yeah. No, when they sold the business eventually, it was actually putting the American newspapers onto the internet.
Yeah.
They immediately said to me, Dad, what do you need? I said, well, I could use, at that time, I needed to settle a couple of, mortgages or something like that. Yeah. So they said, what do you need? I said, well, I don't know. What do you think? Can we send you $200,000? I said, sure.
Okay. And looking at, what you see.
Actually, they offered me 10 million rands.
10 million rands.
Which was, I can't remember how much that was in.
What's that worth? About 50
Probably
quid?
about $450,000 or something at the time.
Okay.
I said, no. Actually, I went to the bank manager and he said, you can't bring that into the country. Nobody's going to take it. Right. So that's why it went down to 200,000.
Okay. Now, looking across the Atlantic at what, well, both your sons, but particularly Elon, has achieved. Again, to go back to my original question, really, I mean, you said he's a talented kid, was a bright kid. I mean, frankly, from my external viewpoint, it looks to me like he's some kind of very special genius. Did you ever think he had the stuff to become the richest man in the world?
Well, you know, when I remember about 2005, 2006, somewhere there, they said, you know, that things were going a bit better with the various, like SpaceX was starting and then the Tesla thing, and they said he's worth $600 million. And then people came to me and said, you know, he's worth $600 million. So I actually said to people at that time, I said, Elon won't stop until he's number one. He won't stop until he's number one. So that was prophetic. You know, I realized he won't stop until he's number one. And he won't stop even now.
So he's now, I gather, worth about $430 billion.
Yeah, about $400 billion. But if you really take the real value of SpaceX, SpaceX is you cannot put a value on SpaceX. No. It's the only viable launch facility in the world now. And not only that, it's way ahead of anything even remotely you know, competitive. And so SpaceX is really worth, with Starlink especially, probably worth about $1 trillion.
Can I ask you a personal question? I want to get back to Elon and his adventures in America in just a second. What's this I read about you had a daughter or you had a kid with your stepdaughter? What's that story?
Yes, well, you know, it wasn't. It was her mother and I were married once and for 2 years, and then I divorced, and then I only saw this girl again when she was about 28. She contacted me in 28, 29, said that she's in terrible conditions and circumstances, and is there any way I could help her? So lovely girl, lovely person. I just spoken to her about half an hour ago. And she said to me, I said, please, you know, let me come and see you. And I saw her, and she was living with a man in a disused shopping center storeroom, you know. Yeah. And
not great. They're not
anyway,
great.
so I managed to provide food for them and toiletries I thought was important. And then I bought her proper clothes. And this went on for about a year and a half or so. And then one day she contacted me and said this boyfriend has thrown her out. So I said, well, you know, into the street. In the meantime, I'd provided her and the boyfriend with a car, second-hand car. And so I said, well, you better come here. So she came to stay with us for a while. She was with us for about 3 weeks or so, and we got on very well, you know. And then her and I, you know, she was like a fully grown, you know, woman of 30, you could say. Yeah. And so she left. Then shortly after that, the boyfriend came crying and saying he wants her back and all that. And then he went. She said, "Okay, I'm going to give him a chance." And she went back, you know. And then a couple of months later, she came to see me and said, "Can I see you?" I said, "All right." And she came to see me and she said, "I'm pregnant." So I said, "Well, it can't be me." You know. She said, "Well, it is you because I'm not involved with this other chap at all. I just help him, you know." So I wasn't happy with that. I contacted places that can do tests on your blood of the mother and father prenatal.
Right.
And this was in Canada. And so we sent them cryogenically the blood to do this prenatal test.
And it was yours?
Yes.
It was yours?
99.9%.
Oh dear. So...
he's 8 now. He was 8 on Saturday.
What did Elon make of all this?
Oh, no, the boys, you know, their own, you know, sort of... they're pretty dashing themselves.
Well, yeah, actually, Elon's no slouch, is he?
And Kimmel.
He makes you look like an amateur.
No, they're pretty dashing themselves.
What do you make of all these kids he keeps having?
No, it's wonderful, actually wonderful. You know, the only reason you shouldn't have children is, you know,
if you can't afford it.
You can't afford it.
Yeah,
yes,
and I
exactly.
think Elon can afford it. Let's talk about what he's achieved in America. Obviously, he's got these 3 major companies, lots of other interests as well. SpaceX, as you said, Tesla, of course, and X, Twitter, as was. 3 remarkable companies. And now, of course, you know, he's become, or latterly was pretty much Donald Trump's right-hand man, running DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency. He's going to sort the government out. Watching all this from over there in South Africa, I mean, what are your feelings? Do you swell with pride? Are you surprised? What do you feel as Elon seems to go from strength to strength?
He's doing what I was doing maybe, you know, when I was in my 20s. Also, you know, I was involved politically and trying to sort South Africa out in those days. I was not pro-apartheid. I was very anti-apartheid. And, but at the same time, I was very pro-law and order and civilization, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But, so no, Elon did a bit of a complete turnaround. You know, you were saying he said I'm a very bad person. About 7 or 8 years ago, it was my 70th birthday. They came to Cape Town with about 50 Americans. And we had this big birthday party for me. And after the lunch, the one chap, his name was Favreau, Jon Favreau, he said to me, so I believe you support Trump. This was just before the election in 2016.
Yeah.
And I said, yes. And everybody broke out into raucous laughter. And then when they finished laughing, he said, well, why do you support Trump? And I said, well, I think he's good. He's a businessman, much better than a career politician,
absolutely.
And so forth, or a career, you know, bureaucrat. And much better. And they all laughed their heads off. They said, no, he's a con man, he's a thief, he's a crook, he's this, he's that. And they all, you know...
Trump derangement syndrome.
They left me sitting there. And then after that, they all we had actually sequestered a whole block for that thing, you know. And they all went off to their private vans and stuff to go back to their hotels and stuff. And then Elon and Kimmel came and you know, sort of came down on me, you know, how could I be so stupid? Couldn't you say, I don't know, you know, don't you realize how you embarrassed us? Trump is evil.
They were saying that, yeah.
Yes, they were saying that. And well, Elon was saying that, and he's evil, and you know, you're also evil to
support him.
To support him.
How has it gone so much full circle?
Well, you know,
what's his journey
they
since then?
experienced the Biden presidency. And when they experienced the Biden presidency, they realized that this group of people were out to destroy everything of value in the United States, including their own businesses.
And how would you define Elon's politics? Because it's all too easy to
centrist.
Say he's
Terribly
right-wing.
Centrist.
And you were saying earlier, though, that I think, like yourself, he has a deep-seated hatred of apartheid.
Well, I wouldn't say it's a deep-seated hatred. I mean, he just doesn't like it. It's not. It's not
fair
normal.
enough.
but he's also very in favour of law and order and civilization. You know, so it's not like. He's very centrist. I'm pretty centrist. I'm inclined to be, you know, before you're going to break something down, just make sure you've got something to replace it with first. That's called being conservative, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm a little conservative, you know. So before you smash down the factory, let's make sure we've got a new factory going before you
Conservative
smash down
in
the
a
old
small
one.
C, yeah, I get that. What do you make of reports at the moment that the word is, Elon is saying, I'm going back to Tesla full-time, working for my businesses. The word is that the closeness between him and Donald Trump has broken
no, that's not true
down.
at all.
They're still very close.
I was there in April. I was with him in April.
And they're still very close.
Oh, of course. I was 3 weeks there. You know.
Did you meet Donald? Yeah.
I have met him in the past, but I didn't this time.
Okay.
You know, it's every time something like that happens, it actually gets recorded. It's listed as part of the activities of the day. Yeah. You know, it's like a permanent record.
Yeah.
So you can't just go in and say hello, how are you? But I have met him back in 1977 and all that. But as far as your question, no, there's nothing wrong there.
You think they're still like
course,
that? Yeah.
Absolutely. As far as the talk that Tesla suffered, no, Tesla's share price is now about 70% higher than it was this time last year.
Okay.
So that in any case is rather almost something that regulators might want to look at. How can you increase your value by 70% in 1 year, which they've done.
It's a remarkable achievement. Let me ask you another personal question. I know it's quite painful for Elon, as we just discussed. He's got a number of children, but one of them was a guy who's transitioned to becoming a trans woman. And he or she or whatever you call him, he's on the front page of Vogue, the current issue of Vogue.
I didn't know that.
What do you feel about that? What do you think Elon feels about it? Because Elon has said, the woke mind virus stole my son.
Well, yes, that's what he said. So you have to listen to what he said. I'm, half inclined to agree with him in a way. But at the same time, you can't be too clever about these kind of things. So you have to try and, it's like all the difficult things in life, divorce, when you lose a child, for example, when you have this kind of thing happen, you have to try and absorb it and try and learn, try and see, try and understand. I've had women and men come to me over the years, maybe 3 times, to tell me, shaking and pale in the face, that their son is gay. And I've said, well, everybody sort of knew they were.
Get used to it.
And I said to them, no, it's nothing, And then as time went by, they absorbed the idea and they accepted everything, But at the time, it's quite a shock.
Let me say one last question about Elon. I read that he's sort of on the spectrum and that he's got Asperger's. I mean, did you recognise that with him growing up?
Well, I'm not even sure what Asperger's is. I read that you concentrate on things to the exclusion of everything else.
Everything else, yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine, if he focused on something, and me and my brother and the sons, his cousin, my brother's sons and Kimball, if we focus on something, we tend to focus.
Yeah, because there's a form of autism, Asperger's, where actually the sufferers are actually kind of geniuses.
I would say that in Elon's case, it's quite an advantage because you could, when he's busy focusing on something, you could, say anything you like to him. It just bounces off him. So, in some ways it helps.
Let's just talk a little bit of politics. We haven't got long to go, but I think this is important because you backed Elon when Elon started tweeting about the troubles we were having here in Britain, the various riots, which were frankly the people, an uprising of the people objecting to the fact that we feel in this country we now have a government, an administration run by Keir Starmer, that is the enemy of freedom of speech, that if you say the wrong thing, if you tweet the wrong thing, you end up in jail. You go to jail for writing hurty words on social media. Elon made no bones about that, kept tweeting, Keir Starmer is the enemy of freedom of speech. It became quite an issue here. Frankly, many of us who live in Britain, we support Elon to the hilt. You did too. Do you look at Britain and do you worry for what's happening? Because one of you first wife...
sort of actions, the things that took place in Britain were, to our mind, not what you expect, from England. It's just not what you expect. England has always been, something you hold up as being quite the opposite, tolerant and caring and loving and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So, that didn't make sense to us at all. As a young boy, I grew up with immigrant parents in Johannesburg, in the immigrant section called Hillbrow, and it was a very harsh sort of situation for kids. We just had two rooms in a boarding house until I was 10 years of age, and weren't well off at all. And kids were, given a thrashing for the tiniest thing, and I was always a good pupil and everything, but I got my share of thrashings. And then when I was 10 years of age, my mother said she's from Britain and she'd had enough. And she left my father and came back, didn't divorce, just left him, came back to England. So we came back here. And as a boy of about 10 to 12, I was in England. And I was immediately aware of the incredible amount that kids were loved in England. I mean, you just couldn't believe it, that people actually loved kids. They just loved you.
They do. Let me ask you this. You were quoted, we're just coming to the end now, but you were quoted not so long ago saying that you were not proud of Elon.
Oh, no,
but you are, aren't you? You are proud of him.
No.
You'd have to be. What father's not going to be proud of the richest man in the world?
No. You can't be proud of your kid doing well at sport or at school or something like that. It's not fair to the other parents.
Right.
You can't walk around, my son is this or my daughter. No. You're very pleased as a parent. Yeah. If they, pleased inside, you keep it to yourself and feel happy that are doing all right. That's what it really was.
Doing all right. He's doing okay.
But what happened there was I was on Australian radio and there were two interviewers, Jackie and somebody else, and Jackie asked me, or the man asked me, do you think your family is especially talented? Yeah. And I was about to say no when the lady, Jackie, interspersed and said, are you proud of Elon? And I'd already said no. Yeah. And then they took that clip. What I was saying no to was I don't think that we're particularly talented or anything. Okay. And they took that clip and spread it around the world in 200 newspapers.
Right. Well, let's put that right, because this is coming to an end now. You are proud of Elon, aren't you?
Well, I don't think pride is the right word. So I'm very happy.
Errol Musk, thank you so much.
That's a pleasure.